was about to say it's the last monthly wrap up of the year, but it's not. Second to last, but I got all the books that I read in November to talk with you about again today. And once again, a great reading month. I enjoyed every single thing that I read, so I'm going to talk about every single thing that I read because I would recommend every single thing that I read. Some more than others, but I had a lot of 5 stars. I had a few rereads. Yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right. Oh my God, I literally forgot to grab this one. You know what? I'm too lazy. The Worst Kept Secret by QB Tyler. So this was the first book that I read, or that I finished this month. I got an arc of it and I literally finished it like the night before it came out, but this one was a new release at the beginning of November and I absolutely loved this one. This is my favorite release of QB's of this year. It was so good. Theo is truly one of my new favorite heroes of hers. So this one follows Avery and Theo and it's a best friend's dad, age gap, you know, romance. And if you've read anything by QB, you just know that you are getting absolutely incredible spice. You're getting a lot of sneaking around, and the sneaking around in this one was absolutely amazing. That was one of my favorite parts of it. And you're getting some good daddy stuff in there. So anyways, Avery is, so this one starts when she's like graduating college and she's moving back home. Her parents own, or at least her mother owns a business in town, and she is going to start working there so that way like she can kind of let her parents go off and retire if they want to or whatever. And she once again starts seeing her neighbor, which is Theo, and he's lived next door for years. He's a former NFL player and he has a son that he moved into this house with. He has 2 kids, a son and a daughter, but Avery and the son have always been really close friends since they first moved in and everything. And the son has always had a bit of a thing for Avery, and Avery's just never really reciprocated that. He's solidly friend zoned, and she's interested in his dad. Well, let me tell you, a couple of years back when Avery came home, she and Theo shared a bit of a moment, but that's all it was. It was just a moment, and they haven't spoken about it or anything since then. And now that she has graduated and back home, she's like, are we gonna like do anything about that little like moment that we shared? And he's like, no, I can't do that. Not only because you're my friend's daughter, but also you're my son's, like my son wants you. My son is interested in you, and I can't like take that away from him. And she's like, but I don't want your son, and I've made that very clear that I want you. And he obviously, he doesn't resist her for that long. He really doesn't, because she knows what she wants. He wants her, and they end up getting together and sneaking around for a long time behind everyone's backs. And it's so good. Absolutely loved this one. A favorite of the month. And it still doesn't top Always Been You. That is still my favorite QB book, but this is towards the top of my favorite of QB's. Next up, I listened to a reread, which was Hideway by Penelope Douglas. This is the second book in the Devil's Night series. I've been doing, the way that I've been now listening to audiobooks is for rereads. I have been having trouble though, like focusing on new audiobooks, so I've been using them for rereads, and I've been loving doing it that way because there are so many books that I want to reread that are my old favorites, like Hideway, that I feel like that aren't taking away from like my physical reading time. So this one follows Kai and Banks. This is the second book in the series, and you do have to read them in order. They do follow like a series of events kind of, and they all build off of each other. But if you are interested in getting to this one, then you definitely have to read Crop to get to it. And this one is a best friend's sister, enemies to lovers, sort of second chance-ish, and even a little arranged marriage thrown in there between Kai and Banks. I'll kind of give you a brief overview, I guess. So this is a series that follows the 4 horsemen. Kai is one of the 4 horsemen. Every year on Devil's Night, the 4 of them just go out and like wreak havoc around the town. And one Devil's Night years ago, 3 of them ended up getting arrested for some crimes, Kai included, and he spent some time in jail. And then when he gets out in the first book, he's ready to get revenge with the other guys on the person that he thinks sent them to prison, and that's the heroine from the first book. And then obviously that stuff kind of plays out. And then in the second one, there's even more things kind of on top of it with like business dealings. Like they're all from very powerful families, and they're all kind of like mixed in with the businesses in the cities. And then also like revenge and some inner group fighting and things. I just absolutely love this series so much, and I really, really enjoyed listening to them on audio. So I re-listened to Hideway, still I think my favorite book in the series and my favorite couple, but then I also listened to Kill Switch again, and this is my other favorite book in the series. I absolutely loved this book. I forgot how much I loved it. Not that I forgot. I knew that this is still like an all-time favorite of mine, but there are just so many moments in here that I had forgotten about between Damon and Winter, and just reading them again, I absolutely loved. So again, book 3, gotta read them in order, but this one here again is Second Chance, Hate to Love, and Sister's Husband. Damon is just truly a very unlikable character in book 1 of this series, and even for a lot of book 2, you're like, Damon, I still don't know about you. And this is truly his redemption book, and like I would go to bat for Damon. I remember the first time I read this series, I was like, I don't even want to read his book, I hate him, and then now I'm like his #1 defender. You just kind of have to read the series in order. I can't really get into details of this one because it would give away things from the other ones, but I can't recommend the Devil's Night series enough. But they are dark romances, so definitely check triggers before jumping in. And also there's a threesome in that one, just if that piques your interest anymore. Let's see. Next up then I read Echo by A. Zavarelli. This one is one that we read for the dark romance read-along that me, Cheyenne, Sam, and Nikki hosted, and this was Sam's pick for it. And it's the first book in the, what is it, Bleeding Hearts duet. I do want to pick up book 2. I haven't yet, but this one follows Brighton and Ryland. So at the beginning of this book, you get like one scene of Brighton when she's like 16 or 17, I think, and her older brother is having a party, and she ends up meeting Ryland that night, and she is immediately kind of like entranced by him, but her brother is like, stay away from her, and whatever. They separate. She has never forgotten about Ryland that night. And then now we jump ahead. She's like in her early 20s now, and I think she moved out to California, like maybe like San Francisco or something, and she's living out there, and she just got a job, or she went out there for school or something, and then something falls through, and then she ends up getting this receptionist job through her friend that she's met out there, and she shows up to work, and guess who the CEO is? Ryland. And she doesn't think that he recognizes her right away, and she's kind of like, how dare he not think about me like I've thought about him, but whatever. She really, though, is struggling because her older brother has been in prison, and she really wants to get him out of there, and she doesn't think, sorry, Aria's scratching on her scratch pad. You're just getting your little moment in here, aren't you? And she wants to get her brother out, and then all of a sudden, Brighton gets a proposition from this random stranger saying that they have information and get him out of prison, but she needs to uphold her end of the deal, which would kind of be just letting this man, you know, have her and keep her blindfolded so that way she does not know who he is. And I'll kind of leave it at that. It gets kind of, like, the plot gets, I say messy, but in, like, the best way. There's, like, a lot of history and back and forth and, like, secrets being revealed and stuff, so it is messy, but I enjoyed it, and I thought that it, like, was paced out pretty well. Here's the thing with this one. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was pretty predictable, but honestly, I don't really care because it was a lot of fun along the way, and it ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm very excited to read book 2 at some point, especially with how everything kind of ended up. I'm actually, oh my gosh, kitties, they're fighting. The kids are beefing. Oh, Dorian, do you see this giant hairball that he was just like chewing on? Oh my God, sir. Did you just pull that out of your sister? You are such an asshole. Next up, I read a hockey romance because I'm back in my hockey romance mood, and I read Iced Out by C.E. Ricky or Richie. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce that, but this one is an MM teammates hate to love, kind of like hate with benefits or like enemies with benefits kind of deal between Quentin and Oakley. So they have both ended up on the same hockey team in college, but they are longtime rivals in the sport, and they do not like each other. They do not get along. The only thing that they can kind of mutually agree on is that they love hockey and that they want their team to succeed, and that they are both superstitious, and their team is not really gelling well. There is, like, you know, just some rivalries. And one night at a party, though, they end up having a little moment together. And then what do you know? They end up winning the next game. And then I can't remember which one of them kind of gets it in their head that they're like, I think because we did that, like, that's why we won. And like getting superstitious about it and like, oh, well, we need to do it again in order to win again. And the other one is like, absolutely not. But then they lose the next game, and then they're both like, maybe we got something going here. So they start hooking up before each of their games because they want to win. They're competitive. And, you know, they start a little arrangement. And as the arrangement goes by, they start to kind of like see the other for like past the rivalry, past all the hatred, past all of the jabs, and start kind of seeing the other one like as a person and getting to know them and kind of like learning about their history, what makes them tick, all that kind of good stuff. Well, that line between hate and love is very thin. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one a lot. The only thing that I wish about it was I wish that they were just rivals for a little bit longer. I wish that they held on to their hate a little bit longer. Oh my God. Suri, shut the fuck up. Suri interrupts every single video. Every single video. How do I turn that off? I need to turn that off on my computer because she scares the crap out of me, just like popping up over there. That would be my only thing about it, is that I just wish that they hated each other longer because I love a good rivalry. And Quentin, though, is a hothead on the ice, and I absolutely love that. He's very quick to anger on the ice, very quick to throw punches. And then obviously, you know, Oakley kind of reins him in a little bit on that, and I kind of wish that he didn't. Like, let him fight. I want to see him punch some people. I loved this book. I really, really, truly did. And it's one that, like, even after I finished it, I'd, like, think back, and I'm like, oh, that was just like really good. I really loved that. So I would definitely recommend. Next up, in anticipation of the movie, I finally read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins because I have been putting this off. Hunger Games was my #1 book series growing up as a child. I loved no other books more than I loved The Hunger Games. And when this first came out, I was like immediately ready to dive into it. And then I just kept putting it off because I didn't want my Hunger Games world to be done once again. Like, I already had to live through that once. I didn't want to do it a second time, but I knew I wanted to see this before, or read this before I saw the movie, and I'm very, very glad that I did because there's so much internal dialogue in here that the movie you just can't have. You can't have it in the movie. I still loved the movie though. I would love to chat more about that, but I feel like I could really go down a rabbit hole. So I'm just gonna stick to the book. But I loved this one, and I definitely recommend, if you saw the movie, read the book. It truly just gives you so much insight into Snow's character. So this one follows Snow, or Coriolanus Snow, and it takes place at the 10th Hunger Games. So where the Hunger Games, the first book, picks up, like Katniss's book, that is the 74th Hunger Games, and this one is the 10th. So 64 years prior to all of the events that take place later. Coriolanus is, he lives in the capital. He's very poor. His family has lost like a lot of its status that it had pre-war, and he's really trying to like make appearances that they're doing better than they are. And he wants this scholarship at the academy because otherwise he's not going to be able to keep affording to go to school. And there's an idea for capital children to become mentors for the district's children in the Hunger Games, and he ends up getting Lucy Gray, who is the female tribute from District 12. At first, he's like, I got 12, let alone the girl. He's like, this is a slap in the face. This is horrible. But then Lucy Gray, you know, starts making a spectacle. She's a performer, and she's singing at the reaping, and she's putting snakes down people's dresses at the reaping. Like, she's making her presence known, and he's kind of like, maybe I do actually have a shot. Maybe I have a shot at this. He doesn't care about her, but he ends up becoming her mentor. And truly, so much of this book is just inside Snow's head, and it's just seeing how time and time again he had the chance to make the right choice or to, you know, have empathy. And just time and time again, he chose opposite. He chose to see people as pieces instead as actual human beings with feelings and emotions. I loved that. I love nothing more than a villain origin story. Truly, that is like my favorite kind of thing. I just love the villains. And I loved getting inside his head and just seeing, like, there was this one point where Sejanus, who is his friend, Sejanus thinks that Coriolanus and him are besties, and even Sejanus's family like treats Snow really well. They're really wealthy, and his mother says to, I think, Tigris, like his cousin, one day, and Snow overhears it, like, oh well, Sejanus, you know, just like loves Coriolanus like he's his best friend. And in Snow's head, he's like, oh, how sad, he has no friends. Like, it's truly chilling sometimes, like, hearing his thoughts. But I loved it. I loved this book, and if you've seen the movie, I definitely recommend reading this. And even if you have not seen the movie yet and you've just been interested in picking it up, I definitely would. I will say though, it's very just like character driven. It's not super action packed. Even like the games are not super action packed, but it's so much more like just disturbing and like graphic and violent than the original books are. So just be prepared for that. I read this absolute insanity, and that is Carnage by Chantal Tessier. So this is her newest release in the Lord series. So they are all in a part of the same series, but they're all standalone. So I've only read The Ritual and Sabotage, and then I haven't read The Sinner or The Sacrifice, which are books 3 and 4. But Carnage sounded really appealing to me. So I wanted to go ahead and jump in. And honestly, I will say I wasn't necessarily like confused by anything. Like I don't think that I really missed out on anything in those other books. It's more that like the cameos, I obviously like didn't really know. I feel like I need a drink. How do I even explain kind of the premise of this book? So basically there's like this secret society, and they have this place where this one specifically like centers around, which is it called Carnage? It's basically like the prison of the secret society. So like if someone in the membership does something dirty, betrays a brother, like does anything bad, and death is too good for them, they send them to Carnage to be tortured basically forever. Or like their enemies, they need information, they send them to torture them and get them out of them. And the people who run it are the Spade brothers, not like biological brothers, but it's a group of like 4 men, and then their sons will like one day take their places. So Saint, our hero in this one, he is the son of a Spade brother, so he knows that Carnage is one day going to be his to run with his 2 best friends. So Saint, he's born into this world, he knows what's expected of him, and he's gone through all of the initiations that it takes. The initiations are really, really messed up. And he is now getting ready to be inducted into the society. And at the end of their 3 years of abstinence that they have to go through, they are going to be gifted a lady. And he really wants Ashton, who is one of his friend's little sisters. And her brother and like family and everything, they are also a part of the society. So she has just known that it is her role to be a lady, which is basically to like keep yourself away from other men, you know, until it is your like you're given to one of the brothers. And to be given to a Spade brother is like one of the highest honors, because they are like such an elite group. And she has always wanted Saint. She's always had a crush on Saint. She's always kind of like wanted to tempt him, and she's just always known that that's who she wants. And even in this world where marriage is not really anything other than like an arrangement, she still wants like that love and connection there, and like that's kind of what she's clinging to for the idea of like just basic survival. And Saint is super, super touch her and I'll kill you, let me tell you, and he wants Ashton, and he will stop at nothing to get her to be his lady. So I will kind of leave it at that as the basic premise of the book. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into this world that you just kind of have to read to find out. This book is thick. It's thick, and there's a time jump in it. It is literally split 50-50 of the first part of the book with this all coming together, and then there's like a revenge plot at the end, which was a lot of fun. Here's the thing, that the reason why I picked this one up and the reason why I just needed that fill is that Chantal Tessier, she just goes there with stuff. Some of the stuff in here made some of the other things that I've read in her books that I thought were wild look mild compared to some of the stuff in here. It is just, it's messy, but in the best way. It's insane in the best way. The heroes, Saint is so touch her and I'll kill you, but let me tell you, he's not a nice guy, and like don't mistake him as that. So they're going to do a lot of messed up stuff, just let me tell you. But it's such a ride. It's such a trip and a half. And honestly, I enjoyed it. Partway through, I was like, am I enjoying this? Am I liking it? But I kind of like that. Whenever I read her books, I find myself questioning. I'm like, am I liking this? Or like, what? Or like, am I liking this? And I always just have such a fun time. They're so toxic. They're so messy. I would definitely recommend, but I will just say definitely heed triggers on this, and maybe just take all your morals and just kind of toss them to the side. Like we have to do a lot with reading, especially if you're a dark romance reader, but with this one specifically, just, you know, just kind of let that set to the side while you're reading this and just enjoy it for what it is, because it's just a lot of fun. So I'm gonna go from arguably like the most messed up book that I read this month to arguably the most wholesome book that I read this month, which is The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. So this was one that I buddy read with my friend. So her and I buddy read a book almost every month together, and she ended up picking this one, and we both absolutely loved it. I loved this book. This would be up there for one of my favorite books that I read this month. And I will say I was skeptical going into this one because I have heard nothing but praise for Ryan Shea. Everyone loves him and is like, he's perfect book boyfriend. Here's the thing though. What everyone else always deems perfect book boyfriend is not what classifies that in my book most of this time. You know, like a lot of the time it would lean a little bit more towards like saint, kind of like Damon territory, you know, that kind of like boyfriend. Not someone who's like learning sign language for her, to be able to communicate with her father, or putting her coffee in the fridge because she likes it cold. You know, that kind of thing. It's not those type of gestures that I'm always like melting over. But this man, I was just worried about him being too perfect. And let me tell you, I loved him. I was like giggling, kicking my feet, screaming at the stuff that he was saying, at the stuff that he was doing. He was the sweetest man, and I loved him so much. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised by that. So this is the second book in the Windy City series. I don't know what this series is called. I think the Windy City series. So I read Mile High. I liked it, but I didn't like love it. But this one blew me away. So you don't have to read the first one in order to read this one, but Ryan is the twin brother of the heroine from the first book, and Indy is the best friend of the heroine for the first book. So they have that connection. It is best friend's brother, roommates, and like forced proximity romance. So Indy, she recently broke up with her boyfriend of like 6 years, like a really long-term relationship, after she found him cheating on her while she came back from work. And that kind of like rocked her world a little bit. And she's looking for some place to move, but she doesn't have a lot of money to spend on rent because she's trying to save for a few various things that you'll learn about in the book. And her best friend ends up being like, why don't you move in with my brother? He's got this huge penthouse, because Ryan is a basketball superstar. Like, he's the star of the Chicago team that he plays for. And he has this huge apartment that he's living in. She's like, why don't you move in with him? It would be good, because Ryan doesn't really interact with a lot of people. So she's like, it would be good for him to have you around, and it would be like really cheap rent for you to be able to live in. And Ryan at first is kind of resistant, because Indy, he just likes his things orderly. He likes his things clean. He's very like plain kind of guy. And Indy comes in and just kind of like throws up all over the place. She's like got decorations going places. She's full of life. She's cooking breakfasts. Like she has her way of living, and she just lives her life loudly. And he doesn't really do that, but he can't help but kind of start to be attracted to her. And it does turn into a little bit of fake dating, because he's so focused on basketball, and the team manager is like, I can't relate to you personally. Like, no one can. You're too focused on the sport. You got to have something outside of the sport that you care about. And he's like, I have a girlfriend. And the manager's like, you do? Huh? Well, bring her with to like this next gala event. So he's like, I'm going to ask Indy. And Indy ends up agreeing. And he ends up agreeing to them be her fake date for her friend's wedding that she's going to be going to, that her ex is also going to be at, so that way she doesn't have to show up alone. I loved literally every single moment about this book. I'm just going to call out one in particular, which is the moment where Indy's ex-boyfriend shows up outside of one of Ryan's games, and they're talking out in like the parking lot, and then Ryan shows up and comes up behind Indy and is like, oh, hey babe, kisses her in front of her ex, who is wearing Ryan's jersey with all of like his friends around, who are also all super fans of Ryan Shea. And he's like, oh, how cute. You're a fan of mine. Gagged. All of then her ex's friends were like, oh my God, it's Ryan Shea. It's Ryan Shea. And we're like foaming at the mouth over him. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll sign whatever. And then her ex immediately is like, oh no, like this isn't even like my jersey, and like trying to play it off. Oh, because he was just made a fool in front of him. Gagged. I loved the hell out of this book. I have nothing negative to say. And another favorite of the month, I'm telling y'all, I read so many good books. The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. And this one came as a pleasant surprise to me, because while I love the Off-Campus series with my entire heart and soul, they were some of my first romance books that I ever read, and they will just always hold a super special place in my heart. Second Generation series, I am not a huge fan of. I feel like they can't ever hold a candle to like the parents' books. So I honestly didn't even know if I was going to read this. But then Zay from Woody Reads, she read it and she loved it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. I'm curious, because this one follows Gigi, who is the daughter of the couple from The Deal, which are Hannah and Garrett. And I was like, you know what? They're one of my favorite couples. I gotta read their daughter's story, so let me go ahead and jump in. You don't have to read those in order to read this. It's just like, again, cute like background cameo kind of stuff that you get. And let me tell you, I loved it. This one follows Gigi and Ryder. So they are definitely kind of like, not enemies to lovers, I'd say like dislike to love kind of deal, because years ago at one of Garrett's hockey camps that he runs, because he is an what was that? NHL superstar and legend, amazing hockey player, and he runs hockey camps. And Gigi, before one of these camps years ago when she was like 16 or something, she was out skating on the ice, just kind of warming up, and she's a hockey player too, and she's an amazing hockey player. And Ryder ends up coming out and he's like, what are you doing figure skating out here? And she's like, what do you mean? And kind of plays dumb. And then Garrett comes out and like is like, Gigi, what are you doing on the ice? And then she like says something, you know, like responding to him and calling him dad. And then Ryder is like, what do you mean you're Garrett Graham's daughter? And Ryder, he like looks up to Garrett and like wanted to make a good impression, and he did not make one. Jump ahead now to current day. They are both attending Briar University, and Gigi, she is on the women's hockey team there, but there really just isn't much forward movement in women's hockey. So she really has her goal set on making the women's Olympic team. And Ryder, there has been a merge between two hockey programs, between Briar hockey program and his at his old school that like shut down. And all of those players now have come over to Briar, and there's a big divide in the team of like Briar guys and the other, I forget what the other team's name was, or like the other school's name was, and they just like, they are not getting along, they're not gelling, they're not vibing on the ice, and it's really starting to affect the team. And Ryder ends up being one of the captains along with Gigi's ex-boyfriend, who is on the team, who cheated on her and she has broken up with, but he is trying to win her back. He ends up being the other co-captain, and they do not like each other. And Ryder has a bit of a reputation for some stuff that he has done previously. He did break a teammate's jaw, really wants to get in good with Garrett to help be like a mentor at an upcoming hockey camp or whatever, because he is going to be signed after college. He has a deal, but again, his the team manager is like not 100% sure on him, and like if he kind of has the image that they want to take on. So he ends up making a deal with Gigi that he will help her with some of the skills that she needs like behind the net that can help her make the Olympic team, if she will help kind of put in a good word with his dad. And they agree. And as they start doing these training sessions and stuff, they both realize that they both need to be blowing off a little bit of steam here. So like, why not also add in a little bit of like benefit situation to the deal? This was just so good. It gave me off-campus energy, but like in a different way. I don't know. I just loved this. I love the progression of their relationship. I really liked Ryder's character a lot and the emotional growth that they had over the course of the book. It was just great. And also the little cameo of Dean and Logan taking Gigi out to lunch was so freaking cute. I just want everything and more that I can get of John Logan in the future. Okay, next up I had another reread because I'm just allowing myself to mood read, and I reread The Dare by Harley LaRue. It's literally like less than 100 pages. It's a really quick novella, but after finishing Losers last month, the Losers duet, I just wanted to go back to where it all began again because I just love these characters so much. So this one follows Manson and Jessica. So it takes place at a Halloween party. So Jessica was very much like the preppy, kind of like popular girl in high school, and Manson was very much the outcast. He was bullied a lot, picked on a lot, and they both show up to this Halloween party. Now they're all like in college. I don't think Manson is actually going to college, but Jessica's in college. They're all like in their 20s, but they're back home in the hometown for the weekend for this Halloween party. And Jessica shows up, and immediately she sees Manson, and he's, you know, he's grown up, he's looking good, and she's like, oh my gosh, he's here. And what everyone doesn't know is that they actually shared a moment back in high school that quickly she tried to forget about. And now that they are back at this Halloween party, Manson sees that she's uncomfortable and kind of likes to make her squirm. So he ends up challenging her to a game of truth or dare, but like playing beer pong. And she just like, she can't not rise to his challenge. And as the game goes, the dares get like progressively you know, a little more scandalous. The final dare ends up being that if she loses, she has to be his slave for the night. And the crowd is like loving it, but her friend is like, you don't have to do this, don't let him go, do whatever. And she's like, no, because she's like, no, I won't back down. But in her head, she's like loving it. She's loving it. But she just like won't allow herself to fully give in to what she wants. And Manson knows that she wants it too, but she just won't allow herself to go there and really like give in to her true desires unless if she feels like she like has to do it, you know, because she ends up losing the bet. So like she has to fulfill it. She doesn't want to like crawl across the floor to get him a beer, but like she has to do it, you know? And they just end up having a really fun night together. And that's pretty much this novella, and it sets up the losers duet. I just wanted to be back with them at the beginning. I love these two. I love Manson. And yeah, it's just great. If you're looking for just a fun, quick time, I definitely recommend checking it out. Last but not least, I read Gratify by Caitlin Taylor. So this was our Smut Club pick for this month, and this one follows Andromeda, but her nickname is Drama, so I'm gonna go with that, and Atlas. So it is a parent's best friend, age gap, godfather, and kind of workplace romance. So Drama has always been really close with her parents growing up. She's had a good relationship with them, and she's also always had a really good relationship with Atlas, her godfather, because she has been dating his son. Atlas has been best friends with Drama's parents since they were all in college together. Like they've just kind of done everything together. They're in business together, and then their kids are dating each other. And Drama goes to surprise her boyfriend off at school, and what do you know? He's cheating on her. So they break up and she returns home. Right at the beginning of this book, then there is an accident where Drama's parents are killed. And so she is grieving the loss of her parents and basically like being left with no family. Atlas is left grieving because those are his best friends, and like he doesn't know what to do without them, and he doesn't really have any family. So like their family was his family, and now he doesn't have his best friends anymore. And he's just really been struggling with that. Drama becomes an intern. She was scheduled to become an intern at Atlas and her dad's company, and she still wants to uphold that. She still wants to go ahead and go through with that and kind of use the distraction. And as she starts working there, the garbage people are here, but I'm talking about the last book, so we're gonna power through. Sorry about the little background noise. But as her and Atlas start spending more time together, she starts, you know, developing some feelings for Atlas. And Atlas also starts developing some feelings for her. But it's obviously very off limits. There's the godfather, there's the age gap, there's her parents being his best friends and like feeling like that would be like betraying their memory getting with her. And also the fact that his son dated her for like 4 years and it still wants her back and she's not having any of it. But, you know, they end up crossing lines, but there is some angst in there. There's definitely some back and forth, but I really liked this one. It was hot. Atlas could be rude at sometimes. He could be kind of possessive at sometimes. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I liked that when everything blew up, that there were actual like consequences to it, which again, I always look for in like a forbidden romance. So anyways, that is all of the books that I read in November. I have had like knockout reading month after knockout reading month, and I loved all of the books that I read. So anyways, that is it for today's video. I don't know if I'm going to have one up on Friday. I have a pretty crazy week going into this next week between like regular work and then also now, in case if you like missed it, I do have like a deadline locked in for book 2 with getting it turned into my editor. So that's kind of like going to take priority, so I will see if I can pull another video together this week. I will definitely try to have one, but otherwise there might be some weeks now over the next couple of months here, like December and January, that I only have 1 video a week. So we'll see if I can get you 2. I will try to get you guys 2 videos, but just be patient with me as I am chugging away on book 2. So anyways, that is it for today's video, and I will see you when I see ya.